and we'll get cracking. So over the course of today, we are going to cover how to build and test ideas, what an MVP is, and a couple of ideas how to build. Number one, a no-code app. So a fully functioning mobile app you can download onto the home screen of your phone without writing a single line of code. And number two, a landing page, which is kind of a basic version of your website to start testing some of your hypotheses. So before we go any further, I want to hear from the group what you feel is the next step for your idea. So now that you've applied for the competition, how are you going to take your idea forward? Right in the chat, we want to hear some of your ideas about what happens next. So Lillian is working on the prototype and testing. That's great to hear. And Jali is building something tangible and testable. This is fantastic. So all of these points feed into what we're doing today. Gabrielle is putting together a business plan. Fantastic. So I'm really pleased that a lot of the comments are related to what we're covering today around the MVP. So I wanted, before we go any further, to think about what happens before you launch a product. So number one, you build, you test and refine ideas using this idea of an MVP, which we'll go into in more detail this afternoon. Then importantly, you build your database of customers. So for many of you, this has probably started already. When you speak to a customer, you look to collect their email and store it somewhere safely so you can use it in the future. And what this means is that you are building up a list of people who could be your future customers. It's a really important and effective way to continue to build up the community around your idea. And Mark and I have put together a tool for you to store all of those useful contacts. So next step is to think about creating what I call a pre-product community of value for your customers. So this is essentially giving you the opportunity to share what you're going to do in the future via your product with your community, but even before your product exists. So for example, if you are building an ethical fashion brand, you don't even actually have to have any products yet. You can put together a monthly newsletter with a curated list of your favorite ethical fashion brands. You can include some news or events or some resources for people interested in sustainable fashion, and start building your brand using pre-existing content and resources and products from other suppliers. And so people are, you're building their trust in what you're about to do. Then generate hype, and we're going to talk about a few ways to achieve that. And then finally, last step, to launch a product to your captive audience. Now, another question for all of you. How long will it take to build version 1 of your idea? Write in the chat, how long will it take to get that version 1 of your idea ready? Jan says 1 week, Lillian 1 year, Mahid 1 week, Gonzalo 1 week, 5 days, 3 months. Okay, so there is quite a range here, and I'm sure the different products and ideas vary in their design, in their content, in their complexity. So that is understandable. But at this point, I really want Mark to share his story about his version 1 of the product and how long it took. Mark.
Alrighty. So with my latest business that I launched nearly 18 months ago, we have built a travel emissions reporting and reduction system. And no, Isaac, the semi-finalists have not been announced yet. Don't panic. So we have built a complicated, service with lots of bells and whistles and so forth in 18 months. But the first MVP we built at a hackathon. We attended the hackathon. The challenge was set in terms of how do you reduce emissions in airlines and corporates. And the first version of our MVP, we literally cobbled together in kind of half an hour of brainstorming, me and my business partner, just demonstrating that if we get X data and we can perform this calculation, we'll get this data. That's all we needed to do. And then we had to figure out how to prove that. That took a couple more hours, putting in specific data, but you see how you can literally build that first version in literally 30 minutes, right? It's about cobbling stuff together and about proving the hypothesis, right? If you go back to our previous sessions of what you think you can achieve and then demonstrating it in some way. And then with each version of your MVP, you scale it up and you put more kind of concrete to it. Don't get me wrong, like these first versions looked absolutely awful. That's absolutely fine. You can put the design on it and wrap it up much later down the line. But it got us to where we needed to do. And within 36 hours, we won a hackathon and we got some kind of cash behind us and we got lots of industry news. 36 hours.
Thanks, Mark. Now, I love this story because I think there's just so much to learn from this attitude. I was actually looking at Mark's investor deck for Thrust Carbon in the early hours of this morning. And what they are doing at Thrust Carbon is actually pretty complex, this carbon tracking tool. But despite that complexity, they were able to get this up and running in 30 minutes. So we have been banging on throughout this process about letting go of your perfectionism and being comfortable with something that looks a bit shoddy. You're not that happy with it, but you are doing that important step of getting it out into the public eye and not spending 12 months building something that you finally launch and no one cares or it doesn't solve their problem or no one's interested. That is bad practice and none of us here want to get to that point. So we are on a bit of a trend here, so I'm interested to hear how you'll respond to my next question, which is how much money do you think you'll need for that first version 1 of your product? Okay, Christopher Gonzalo, 0. Eleanor, 20K. Alavi says 20,000 would be nice. Okay, so there's a real range here, which is very interesting to see. And this actually represents how I used to think about building a startup. I probably need to pick up the phone and speak to people I know to try and get some money, to shake a bit of the money tree, to get some cash in the bank to pay for developers and all the other stuff that I can probably think of. But Mark and I today would like to challenge you all to see what can you build without opening your wallet at all, being as stingy as possible. What can you achieve to start building the first version of your product? And a great analogy for this is on this image. I love thinking about MVPs using this. So imagine that the problem you're trying to solve is helping Londoners get from point A to point B in a quicker, more convenient and safer way. And on the top line, there's one approach to this. You start with a wheel. You attach that to another wheel. You build the chassis around those two wheels. And then finally, you build out all of the internal mechanics and engineering so that car can work. The problem is that in steps 1 to 3, you do not have anything that you can test out with your customers. Whereas on the bottom line, you start with a skateboard, super cheap to make, or buy off Gumtree for a tenner, and then, upgrade that to a scooter, then a bicycle, then a motorbike, and finally a car. And what happens here is you have something that you can test this process of getting people from point A to point B quicker, more healthily, more safely, and you're not spending huge amounts of money in the process. So at this point, Mark and I wanted to spark a few ideas by talking about the different types of MVP. And before we do, I wanted to share this wonderful quote from Reid Hoffman, an extraordinary entrepreneur and founder of LinkedIn. And he said, if you are not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. So very much in tune with what Mark and I have been saying about just cobbling it together and getting it out into so you can start testing it. And coming up are about 7 or 8 different types of MVP, and these kind of go in order from most simple through to most complex, but each of them give you some way of testing out the hypotheses behind your idea. So number 1 is called the smoke test. And this is basically you run an ad campaign on Google Ads or Facebook or whatever platform, and it might drive to a landing page, and you're testing if people are interested. So you can test using these ad platforms the impressions, so how many people you reach, the click-through rate, so how many people open that ad, and then potentially some other stuff. So as we're going to talk about in a moment, on a landing page, you can actually capture people's emails, and that's a really nice way of testing people's interest, because you're actually asking for something that is personal, which is an email address. People have actually got skin in the game when they give you something that is their own. So you can run a campaign like this with a budget of 20 quid if you want, or even less, and see what happens. Set up some tests about how many people you think will convert to giving you their email address, and run the test. So that one is super simple. You can launch an ad in probably 15 minutes using Google Ad Manager. So number 2, this one I love because it's so smart. It is called Sell Before You Build. I'm sure a lot of you have come across Kickstarter, or maybe even used Kickstarter. And the reason they totally changed the game in terms of idea financing is, well, first of all, they opened up finance to people who otherwise might not have had access to money, which is fantastic, democratizing access to capital. But alongside that, it was basically a test platform, because what you're doing is testing people's appetite and interest in your product. And if you can prove the appetite, then you have got the money to build the first version of your product. And if that campaign, is not fully funded, that also gives you the opportunity to revisit how you framed it, how you approach that idea, and maybe make some tweaks before you go at it again. Next up is the concierge MVP, and this is about being a little bit smart, because you're essentially completing the service that might eventually sit on a platform, a website, and a mobile app, but you're doing it manually, and that helps generate ideas and test demand. And my favorite example of this is from a guy called Ross, who came through our program at King's. He's a fantastic entrepreneur, and he did something very smart when trying to test a marketplace that connected filmmakers and videographers with people who needed films being made. And he thought, well, I probably need 5 to 10K to set up my app, and it's going to be quite costly. So what can I do instead? And he already had in his phone book about 50 videographers. And so he thought, well, why don't I just use WhatsApp? Because the problem I'm trying to solve is matching up high quality filmmakers with these corporates within 30 minutes. So he would go and do a very slick sales pitch to corporates, get the brief, get the dates, get what's needed, and push that out to his WhatsApp group. And within 30 minutes or less, he would have at least 5 videographers ready to go to run that job. And then he said, okay, I've made the sale, and he takes a 10% arrangement fee off the total price that the videographers get. Point proved, he starts making sales, and now they've become a very, very successful filmmaking company called Unishoots, and they've got a few other divisions of the company now. The next is called The Wizard of Oz, and for those of you who have not seen the film The Wizard of Oz, first of all, you definitely because it's great, and second, what the film is about is this scary wizard who appears in the sky, but then at the end they discover that the wizard is basically quite a timid man hiding behind this big machine to make himself look scary. And this type of MVP is about faking the features that are supposed to be automatic or technical by doing them manually behind the scenes. And I'm sure many of you have come across the book, The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. Well worth a read. The opening case study is about Tony Hsieh, who went on to found probably one of the most successful e-commerce websites in the world called Zappos. And his kind of notional idea was that people would be up for buying shoes online rather than on the high street. So he wanted to test it out because he didn't know whether it was true or not. And he did something really smart. He went to those same shoe retailers on the high street and he said, I would like to go and take photos of some of your stock. I'm going to stick them on this website that I'm building and I'm going to sell them to people. So once I've sold a shoe, I'll come to you, I'll pick up those shoes and I'll post them myself to that customer. And actually, even better, I'll give you 100% of the revenue that I've made from those customers. And of course, the shop owners were like, wow, that's incredible. We can just sit back and relax and someone's going to go out and make sales for us and we'll take all the cash. Sounds too good to be true. But he was being incredibly smart here because he didn't care about the money. He cared about proving there was demand for this new idea of buying shoes online. And of course, there was tons of demand. And then he went out, built his website, and it's gone on to be extraordinarily successful. But he tested it without making any shoes, without warehousing or stocking any shoes, doing any logistics, having any physical shop. He just built a very basic website. Super smart. And then last of all, a single feature product. So launching with a single or limited set of features to gain traction and validation. And a nice example of that is Buffer. So for those of you out there who do a lot of social media or worked in community management, Buffer is now one of the market leading tools for scheduling posts on social. But when they launched, they just kept it super simple and they focused on Twitter, and all you could do was schedule and post tweets. So very, very simple product, but it let them start testing out some of their core ideas. And then last but not least, Dropbox. So many of you, again, will have used Dropbox. They changed the game in how we share documents via the cloud. But again, when they started out, they just had an idea. And what they did is make a very low budget animated video to explain what Dropbox did. And people were so excited by what they were setting out to do that 100,000 people signed up to use Dropbox just on the back of the video. And they did not even have a product. They'd barely written a single line of code. But then with this traction, they went to Y Combinator, probably the world's leading startup accelerator, and pitched to be on the program and get investment from them. And they were like, well, of course, you're going to come onto the program, because if you've got 100,000 people waiting for the product, we're pretty sure you're going to be successful. So that is a whole bunch of different ways you might be able to approach the MVP. And later this afternoon, each of you is going to have a chance to really start planning out what that first MVP of yours might look like. So before we go any further, I want to pass over to Mark. if you had any comments or reflections on the different types of MVP or any tips about how to make it successful.
Yeah, I'd really emphasize simplicity is your absolute friend. I think in my early 20s, I was convinced that in order to build important businesses that will improve people's lives and, things people need and desperately want, that, it would take something complex, something, amazing and just, oozing wow factor at every single stage. And it's really not, right? When people have problems, they want solutions. Right, and most of the time they're far more concerned about the outcome and what you're delivering for them than how you do it. Right, Dropbox, so clunky at the beginning. Right, even I mean, there's still elements of it that I find clunky today. Right, but it wouldn't put me off using it because the value it delivers is so great. Ultimately, they might choose another competitor later down the line, but that is stuff that you can think about later down the line, right? You don't necessarily need to understand the ins and outs of you versus your competitors at the very beginning, right? Really, you just need to focus on one thing that either your competitors don't do, or if you're brand new to a market and you can't find competitors in it, that one thing that no one is doing, and then focus on that, right? Take away all the bells and whistles. I don't care about the next 5 features you're trying to create right now. Like, I'll care about them in 6 months or a year, right? I really just want to see that one feature and that one clear benefit at the very beginning. And it's just the purpose of the MVP is to prove that you can genuinely deliver that benefit, right? And if you can't prove you're delivering that benefit, then the MVP isn't good enough. So let's do MVP number 2, right? And keep going until you prove to me that you can deliver said benefit.
Totally. Thanks so much, Mark. Okay, so for the next 30 minutes, we are going to cover a lot of information and a lot of different tools, and it may be a little bit overwhelming, but that is okay. This is about planting a little seed about what you can do and the tools you can use to make this happen. So to kick this all off, we are going to look at app design. So many of you will be thinking about building an app, and I'm sure many of those same people are not developers, are not technologists, but this is about building a functioning app fast and without any code at all. So before we do that, we are going to look at creating a logo, and this is a classic case where people open their wallets and try and commission designers or whatever to make a logo, and then suddenly they've spent 50 quid, 100 quid, maybe 200 quid on their logo, but you can do it a lot quicker. So we're going to use this tool called the logo generator, and I think Mark will be able to share the link in a moment, but here we go. So this is what it looks like. Follow quickly. So I'm going to move fast. So throughout this process, I have been using the case study of Joan, who is a elderly lady based in London facing loneliness in her care home. So I'm building a business called Hello Joan, and the type of business is care. Okay, done. Now all I need to do is choose some fonts that I like. I like this one, it feels trustworthy. I also like this one, it's quite serious. This one again, trustworthy, friendly. This one again, and I kind of like this one. And then finally, this one. So that's my typeface done. And then now I know that when Joan knits her socks that she loves making in the old people's home, she loves these colors on the right hand side. So I'm going to pick that color palette and write a basic slogan, connecting you to those you love. Very simple, and then continue. Now all I need to do is choose some icons that resonate with my brand. So I'm going to search for the word elderly. These I'm not such a fan of, but this one's kind of nice, a little bit more playful. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead with that. You can choose up to 3 icons, but I'm just going to choose one for this demo. And then here we go. Hey, presto, I have a whole page full of logos. Here we go. Tons of different colors. And all I need to do scroll through and choose one that I like. And I think this one's kind of cool. So I can open this up and it doesn't just give me a logo, it gives me a logo, my business card design, my company t-shirt, and the beginning of my website design, and even better, what my future mobile app might look like on the App Store. So very, very exciting to see this come to life. And to download this, you go into the bottom right of the screen. I can just get rid of my cookies. Here we go. And then I can click on the bottom left to sign up and create an account on Namecheap. Or if you're short on time, you can just do a screen grab like this, straight over the logo, and you have saved that to your desktop. So that is how you create a logo very, very quickly. And that is one of the tools you can use this afternoon. So moving on quickly, I've got a little bit of a visual identity about what my app is going to look like, but now I want to think about what the design of that app should be. When it comes to app design, the number one thing you should think about at the start is what is the goal of the app. The app I probably use most of all in London is Citymapper. It has a simple goal to get me from point A to point B in the cheapest, quickest, most convenient way. And everything about Citymapper is optimized to make that process as easy to use and as quick. So that means the number of steps from opening the app through to achieving my goal is optimized to be as small as possible. Because the longer that process, the more likely I'll get bored, disengage, quit the app, or even delete the app, which is the worst possible outcome for a startup founder. So you want to be basically drafting your app goals, and you can do this using pen and paper. So I like to use a very basic template like this. You just get a scrap of paper, you draw 8 boxes, and you think about your user flow. And at this point, you can basically open up some apps that you use for inspiration and go through it and screen grab and think about the kind of steps and kind of screens that different companies use. Typically, there'll be a welcome screen being like, hey, Ed, welcome to Citymapper. There might be a login screen with a Google or Facebook integration. There might also be some onboarding questions about my needs, my filters, my locations, my requirements to help personalize the app. Then there's a home screen with a few options to direct me through the app, etc., etc. And what is cool is you can literally cobble together your app flow a little bit like this. So this is a fictional app called Boosted Boards, and the pictures are super scrappy. That is what today is all about. And I think Mark is going to be able to post the link to this in the chat. There is an amazing tool called Prototyping on Paper, which lets you take photographs of your app flows, load them up to the app, and then you can start making different parts of that picture interactive. So you can put like a kind of hotspot on the button that you've drawn, which is called login, and you can link that, paper drawing through to another screen. And then suddenly you've got this prototype that your users can interact with, and you can start getting feedback. So step 1, think about your goals. Step 2, sketch out your app flow. And then step 3, prototype that app flow using something like prototyping on paper. You can literally set up that whole prototype in probably about 10 minutes, which is super cool. Right, I'm going to move on very quickly. I said it was going to be quick, and here we go. So now I want to introduce a tool which for me is really life-changing because I love building stuff, but I am not an app developer. But Glide lets me build apps without writing any code. So what we'll do is go on to glideapps.com. and follow along and I will show you how it works. So I'm opening up the home screen here. All I need to do is sign up and then I can create an account. And this is my own personal account where I've started playing around with a few different apps here. And what is amazing about Glide is that here are the apps that you're working on. Here are some apps they try and, charge you for. But down here in the classic templates, there's tons and tons of templates for you to use. So if I click view all, look at all of these templates that you can start using. There's city guides, there's budget trackers, which is a bit like a Monzo. There's even like a kind of Instagram style photo sharing template that lets you build out your no-code app very quickly. So I can click on personal budget tracker. I love the look of how this app is going to look like, and I can click copy app for free. Open that up, and then here we go. If my computer lets me load. All right, so this is the interface where you can start editing and playing around with your app design. My Wi-Fi is being super slow. Okay, so while that's loading up, I'm going to go back to the home screen and show you a little app that I made for my friend who is a personal trainer and wanted to use a bit of technology to help scale up her work. And I actually made this on a lunch break very, very quickly. So it is only 1% finished, but it helps explain how this works. Now, once you've got your app flows and you've prototyped them for your app, the next place to go is to think about the data that you need to draw on to make your app work. And the great thing about Glide is that it's all based on Google Sheets. So just like Microsoft Excel, you can go into this little icon here, which is your database. And if I click on there, here is all of the data that sits behind the app. And on the preset functions, there's already a ton of stuff preloaded in here. And I'm hoping this lets me scroll around. It's being a bit buggy. But here are all of the different workouts. So I can have some instructions, the holding image for how it will look on the menu. There's GIFs to explain how that workout works, how-to videos, tips, etc., etc. So this is all of my workouts. And there's a whole bunch of other information in here. I wanted to share the info page, and this is where I could kind of begin to bring to life the story of Clarissa's startup, which is called Neo. All I did was create a column called About Neo. And just like with using Excel, you can go into a cell and edit the content. And here I've just done a little summary of her business. I've edited details about her website, some of the links to link through to, etc., etc. So you can basically put together all of the information, all of the data that the app will call upon here in this Google Sheet section. And all of the templates make it super easy for you because all of those are preset. And then now I can use some of the design tools to bring this to life. So here you can see on this home screen options: home, workout, about, and schedule. And those tabs are all editable here. So you can see home, workout, about, and schedule. There's also a few that are grayed out that I could add in if I fancy. So on home, if I want to edit it, I can change the styling. So I've used the style called details, but there's also a swipe functionality, which creates cards a little bit like Tinder. There's checklists, there's cards, there's tiles, calendars, maps, even if your idea is location based, but I'm going to stick with details. I can change the tab icon here and make that more like a home button. There's tons of different things I can do to edit it. But this, if you remember, is calling all of the images that I had tagged in the database. And if I click through, I can see some different workouts that I might want to try. And I can actually favorite some of them. So I kind of like the look at this one and this one. And then in my workout screen, I've got my full list of workouts that I want to do. Might try this one. And then if I click on the favorites tab, here are all of those workouts that I favorited. Honestly, all of this is preset and predetermined by the template. So it makes it super, super easy to use. And then the last kind of key bit of functionality is this one here, which is the setting. So you can change the appearance, you can change around the color palette or the design of the different screens here. You can make it a dark option if you fancy. You can also change the app info. So I can change the icon here and choose a preset icon from Glide, or I can upload my own one. So for those of you who are able to create a logo today, you can just literally click upload and it will be uploaded to your app. There's stuff around privacy, so how people log in and use the app. There's stuff around sharing, a sign-in screen as well, user agreements, so T's and C's and all of that stuff. So you can see here that it's already created a sign-in screen for me. Data, there's billing. So if you want to charge for your app, you can integrate with Stripe, which is a payment provider. And there's also a bunch of integrations, which I'm not going to go into. I just wanted to share what happens if you want to make this go live. So I can click share. And here I can literally say everyone in the world can see the app. It creates this URL to find the app. So it creates a random string of words, bumpy invention 1457, and I can copy that straight to an email and send it out to people or on a WhatsApp, and your friends will receive a little notification saying download my new app, and they can add it to the home screen and start using it immediately. So super, super easy to use, and one of my favorite apps to play around with at the moment. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass over to Mark. My laptop is about to run out of battery, so I'm just going to grab my charger and yeah, hand over to Mark. 1 second.
Quick, stall for time. So a little question there on, is that downloadable on both Android and iOS? I'm not entirely sure it is on Android. So do just Google, get on it. But what you will find is there are going to be other alternatives to that. A really good place for you all to start when looking for new tools is Product Hunt. I cannot emphasize enough, there is an entire industry based around people creating startups. You know, it is really the most, it's perceived as one of the most glamorous, exciting and fun things that you can do at the moment. I think startups can be all of those things. It's also infinite amounts of hard work and hustle and grind and hard work, right? But what it does mean is that there are lots and lots and lots of businesses out there who do exactly what you need to do for that no code, low price starting point. So there really is no excuse not to make stuff, right? Make stuff and then make people respond to your stuff. And that is really what traction is, right? When those of you say, do I need X or Y for this award? Like, it's a how long is a piece of string, right? If you tell me, you know, do I need 10,000 customers? No. If you have 10,000 customers, I'm going to be really impressed, right? Clearly, right? Equally, if you're saying we have one customer, right? That might be an absolute game changer. You know, some days there are competitions where you're at the perfect place for what they're looking at, and there are other days where you think you might be best placed, but someone else comes along. You can't worry too much. But the more things like this you enter, the more the business will push forwards, you will grow, and the more you can test your MVPs. You know, this is such a wicked network. You really do need to connect with each other, learn from each other, and, you know, get feedback from your products, and use this opportunity so you can get users.
Thanks, Mark. And that leads me very neatly onto the next section of this afternoon. So thanks, everyone. I've now got my laptop plugged in, so I'm not going to get disconnected anytime soon, hopefully. So as Mark said, basically an MVP without testing it is no use at all. So I just wanted to share a few tips on how to address user feedback. Basically, well, there's lots of different approaches you can use, but a quick way to describe them is, first of all, using supervised feedback, and the second is unsupervised. So thinking about supervised testing, you basically speak to people about your app and give them scenarios. So imagine you're doing X. Imagine you are trying to get across London to get to your university lectures. I would like you to use this app to try and get to your lecture at Greenwich University. And you walk them through that scenario. And along the way, you're asking them questions and looking to see how they respond. What do they find confusing? What is not on there that they might have been looking for and wanted? Did they understand the concept? And you are writing notes, ideally against those app flows that you've just been prototyping, to sort of pinpoint where things can be changed. And you are learning from all of their input and their feedback. Another way to think about user feedback is to do it unsupervised. So you can just let people use the app without prompting them in any way, and you can give them a feedback form on Google Forms, or you can use a bunch of different tools to actually test the analytics of how they use your app. So there's tools like Hotjar and Mixpanel, and you actually test things like how long people stay on a particular screen, how likely they are to move on to another screen, how many times per month, week, day they use the app, where they might come to a dead end, etc. So there's a couple of ways, different ways of doing user feedback, but in the early stage, keep it simple, sit with people who might want to use the app in the future, sit alongside them, and you can use a tool a bit like this one, which I love. 4 simple questions: what I liked, what I changed, questions I have, new ideas. So you get your users to say what I liked. Tick the stuff that they found useful. Number 2, what I'd change, the things they didn't like, the things they found clunky or hard to use or not useful. Questions I have: why did you not include X? Have you thought about why? What feedback might they share there? And then lastly, why not crowdsource new ideas from your users themselves? It's a great opportunity to get them to inspire you with their own creativity. So that's a really handy way to start thinking about user feedback. Okay, so we have got about 15 minutes before taking a break, and I want to whiz us through landing pages. And so a landing page, basically treat it as a very simple to build version of your website that is conducting a specific test. And the tool that I love for building landing pages is called Carrd, CARRD.co. So here is how it works. So choose a starting point. So in I go, and there is a bunch of different options. There's a profile, which is like an online CV, landing page, a form, a portfolio for those creators out there, and then a section website, which is a little bit more multi-layered and a little bit more complex. So we're going to look at landing pages, and here there's a bunch of templates on the pro version. They're trying to get me to spend some money on their website, of course, but the free templates are also really nice. So I think I am going to use this one here. It's kind of nice. So I'm going to select that one. And here we go, it loads up. And the way that Card works is that it is basically a bunch of these boxes, which are called image or containers, but basically they're all these content boxes that you can edit. So for example, on this image box, I can just click on here, upload, and from my desktop, I can upload this, which is my logo for Cool Joan. And I think I'm just gonna avoid the text, and here we go. So I've already got my logo uploaded. I can click on the back screen, and the background, it can be an image to upload, it can just be a basic color, so I could use this purple, or I can click in here to start changing some of the colors very simply. I could also use a gradient to give a little bit of a softer feel, and use these editing tools to change those gradients. Or if you want something that looks a little bit more interactive, you can actually upload a video, which is a really nice, engaging way to host or present your landing page. So that is some of the basic design tools. And then you want to think about what actually sits on your landing page. And here you want to be selling the value of your idea as quickly as possible. So at this point, you can go back to what I think was workshop 2 about value propositions and start entering that in here. So we know that Hello Joan is all about connecting you to those you love. So there is my text, and I can change the color, the size, and the font of that text here. I'm not sure about that one. Let's, here we go. And do a little subheading here. So Hello Joan is the world's first AI-powered app addressing loneliness in the elderly. Addressing elderly people's loneliness, probably slightly better grammar. And then here I can put in my different benefits. So remember, always sell the benefits before the features. So we know that Joan has some issues with memory. She has early stage dementia. So I'm going to say voice activated controls. Nice. So she doesn't even need to remember how to use it. It is all powered by her voice. And in here, again, I can upload a little image. So I can upload the same one again, just to save time. Obviously, in the real world, I'd have a slightly different image there, etc., etc. So that is how Card works. Very, very easy to use. And here are the steps to using it. So in the second half of today, you'll have a chance to actually get your hands dirty and create your own landing page. But as Mark and I keep banging on about, these tests are useless unless you start capturing a bit of data around them. And a great piece of data is to capture a user email, because it's actually a form of transaction. And a tool that you can use to capture email is Typeform. It's a little bit like SurveyMonkey or Google Forms, but I just really like Typeform because it's just really slick design. So you can come into Typeform here, and you can actually create Typeforms using a template. And so here we go, registration form. There we go. And here is a template. And so you can edit that template or build one from scratch. And basically, you create this sign up form, and in Typeform itself, you click share, and then there will be an option called embed into a web page, and it will give you a bunch of HTML code. Don't worry about what is in that code. You can just simply click copy the code, and then go back into card, click on this plus icon, and you will be able to add in your form there very simply, and you just copy that code directly in. What that lets you do is have a home for your value proposition to pitch what you are, what value you're going to bring to your users, and create a mechanism for capturing and storing all of those priceless email contacts. So that is a very quick tour around landing pages and how to use Card. And now, before we have a break, I just wanted to share this template that Mark and I have made for you guys to store your user data, your customer data. Broadly, the important thing is that you need somewhere simple to keep this information. And nothing is more simple than a Google Sheet like this. The way it works is on tab 1, you enter in your contacts, and then in tab 2, you create what you could call deals or opportunities. Basically, you know, if you're trying to communicate with the contacts in your database or sell to them, that's where you can keep track of that activity. So all you need to do is type in a first name and a last name. So Mark Corbett, who works for Thrust Carbon, and he is the, not sure, CEO and head of product. Not sure that's right, but let's go for it. Then Mark at carbon.com, and I think he is a potential customer, and the status is that actually I've sent him the first email. So there we go. I have simply stored Mark's contact information, and then in here I can create a deal. So I'm going to call the deal Thrust Carbon, which is the name of Mark's organization, and then in here you'll see a preset list of organizations, and I think Mark is going to give me £8,000. Thanks very much, Mark. Deal stage. I've sent him a proposal for that particular deal, and the associated contact is Mark Corbett, and it pre-fills job title, email, and I can say here, I can just document how it went. So Mark loved it, agreed a follow-up meeting, just to keep track of everything that is going on. So that is broadly how the template works. You are very welcome to use this template. Just please go to File here, make a copy, and create your own version, because this is the template that I've used. If you start editing this one, then no one else can use it. So please do make a copy. Mark, you're the sales pro between the two of us. Do you want to share a little bit more about how to effectively manage deal flow and pipelines?
Yeah, absolutely. So Selim just put a great point in here about using Loving Airtable for these types of trackers. That's another great app out there. You know, what we've shown you is literally just the most basic, simple Excel. So lowest barrier to entry, easiest to just use and begin with. The trick to this stuff is just find what works with you. It'll take a bit of experimentation, and then just get really, really good at it. HubSpot's amazing when you're kind of further down the line. You got to pay for that one, so we'd advise against it for now, but later down the line, really, really worth it. Airtable's free. Our Excel is obviously free. Go find a note-taking app, go make sure you've got your email app, go make sure you've got your task management app, and then your CRM. Those are literally the 4 most important applications that you will be using kind of as you grow your business. And then when it comes to actually kind of doing the sales, you know, you've got to keep in contact with them. If you're doing a B2B business, so that's business to business sales, I really encourage you read the book Predictable Revenue. In all my experience, it is categorically the single best book for just demonstrating how you go from A to B and how you create a full sales pipeline. If you want to do B2C, it's much more about kind of customer nourishment or nurturing, I should say, and you need to have that newsletter. You need to have regular engagement. You need to be connected with them at every stage, especially early on. The people who are giving you feedback saying, "Oh my God, this product's amazing. I've never seen anything like it." They will be your first sales, right? So you have to let them know, hey, I thought we'd let you know we've done our new CAD designs. Here's our MVP of our product. This is what it looks like. Release date, end of 2021. Whatever it takes to kind of keep people engaged and excited until you're ready to sell to them. And the age-old adage that I would really encourage you to get your head around is that a sale is made in every single conversation, right? Either, when I'm talking right now, either you're buying what I'm saying or you're not, right? Like I'm literally making a sale on whether the stuff is useful to you. When you are speaking to early customers, you are selling them on whether they want to give you feedback, on whether they want to be in your pipeline for later down the line, if they want to do a pilot or test something out. So, when you're an entrepreneur, you've got to be doing sales on some level.
Thanks so much, Mark. Right, so looking ahead to part 2, so in the second half of this afternoon, we are going to jump into the digital studio on Miro and start thinking about your goals for the MVP. There's no point sort of plowing into these tools, however exciting they might look, without thinking, what are you trying to achieve? So you use your time and effort really resourcefully. Then we're going to give you some time and space to actually start playing around with some of these tools. Don't worry if you don't have anything complete by the end of this session. This is not what it is about. It's just about having a dig around and seeing what's out there and how things work. And also a big thing that we want to encourage is, if you're not clear on something, Google it or look at the tutorials on Card, and especially on Glide. There's a ton of explainer videos, and there's loads of stuff from the community on YouTube about how the platform works, and it will just help you to navigate how the tools work. So we've used these tools before. We know how they work. It will take a bit of time maybe to get up to speed, but the more you practice, the better you will get. And then, as we mentioned, the last part of today will be looking into product launches. So Marco, I think your hand is up. Did you have a question you wanted to share?
Yes, please. I would like to. I missed a passage in between Typeform and Card, because I would like to know when a potential customer let your email in the landing page, where exactly will be recorded, in which software?
Yeah. So as ever, when you're capturing email, they might be recorded and stored in different places. So with Typeform, it will be stored in the Typeform platform itself, and you can just download those to an Excel file and then upload them to wherever you're storing them. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm gonna imagine that's a yes. So it is now 2 minutes past 5. We're gonna have a 5-minute break. Can we all be back ready for part 2 at 7 minutes past 5? And we're gonna kick into part 2. Thanks a lot. Catch you all in a second. Right, welcome back, everyone. I am going to write a little note in the chat. I've just written who's here in the chat. I can't see anyone's video, so if you are back from break, please can you thumb up on my message, and then I can have a sense of how many people are back in the session. Okay, that number's going up. All right, good to see. Let's crack on with part 2. So now we have done a whistle-stop tour around a whole bunch of tools and ideas for building your MVP. And now what we're going to do is jump into the Miro board. And now Mark has very kindly stored all of the learning content here under workshop 5. The quote from Reid Hoffman, the little template for how to sketch out your app user flows, and also the different tools that we've used so far. So if you're looking for one of these URLs, you'll find them all here in one place. And what we're going to do now is think about planning our MVPs. All too often, people just plow in to designing an MVP without really thinking about the goals of this test. An MVP fundamentally is a test of one of your hypotheses. So we've created this very simple framework. Number 1, I want to test, for example, based on a short intro to my idea, potential users will sign up for my newsletter. This helps qualify their intent to buy a future product. That is my test. I think if I do a quick intro to Hello Joan, people will give me their email. Makes sense so far, hopefully. And my expected result is 5% of users sign up. I think if 1 in 20 people that find out about Hello Joan from my target audience will sign up for my newsletter. And then that helps prompt what my MVP could be. So it could be, number 1, a landing page on Card with an integrated Typeform survey. It could potentially be a Google ad campaign pushing people to that landing page. But that should help test my key hypothesis that I've just outlined. Or I could make a little promo video, and there's tons of tools out there today to make really high quality video fast. And one of them is called Veed. I love Veed's tools. They literally, you can make great quality video with automatic subtitles, transcriptions, filters, tools, logos, colors, emojis in about 15 minutes. And here's a little screen grab of how it works. So that's another idea for a potential MVP. But now you guys have about 30 minutes or so to click here, board 1 in the top right corner as usual. You click through and it should open up in the Miro board this page here. I can see a few of you already on there, which is great to see. And all you need to do is zoom in and choose one of these. And you can name it. So you can put a little sticky note on the top of this and say Ed's action plan, so people know not to touch it. There we go. And you can start filling it in here and writing directly into these boxes. And that helps you start planning your MVP. And when you've gone through thinking about your test, your expected result, and your potential MVPs, then you can use the rest of this time to start having a look at some of these tools that we've been through and seeing what you can come up with. This is open time for you to explore. That also means that me and Mark are here to answer your questions. all the way through this and for the rest of the session, please, please, please do write your questions in the chat. Or if it's, maybe a longer question, also feel free to unmute yourselves and share those questions with the group. That is what we're here for. This is what we love. Use this time to get feedback on your ideas, to get inspiration about how the MVP might look or how you might address it. We've got until about 20 to 6 to work on this. Any questions? So people have said how to access those grids on Miro. So here is the Digital Studio in Miro that I think Mark has just shared. And you can zoom in and out on Miro. So here I'm zooming out and I can see the full board. And what you want to do is scroll to the right and look under Workshop 5. And you'll see all of the tools that we've used. And then finally here, board 1, click in the top right corner and it will open up the MVP action plan. All right, over to you all to start exploring. Remember, if any of you are figuring out how you might test your proposition, test your assumptions, please feel free to drop a note in the chat or unmute and ask us a question directly. We are here to give you feedback, to share potential ideas, and hopefully spark some ways to take your ideas out into the real world with some MVPs.
May I ask a few things about an idea? I applied for this program starting from a project that I use for my university for an exam, but the potential of this project just to show some tools and how this project can evolve is to build in a virtual reality the exact copy of the business and to support people that maybe have affected with pandemic to try to duplicate a business, to try to get customers exactly after with the tools that you show now to try to engage new customer. So how can move to transform the original idea, exactly which I applied for this project, move and transform for something that became business? What is the passage that I had to start to do by myself with these tools, in your opinion?
So before I answer your question, can you just clarify what your business idea is in one sentence? So you're using VR to?
Yes, I use augmented reality and virtual reality in space using a platform called RSteps, and I'm able to use this plus artificial intelligence to create everything, to recreate a copy of a real business, and so the people maybe can have a survey like you walk in a real shop or business and maybe decide to buy some items, and after connect this 3D object to the website of the customer so the people can do the purchase or buy some services, something like that.
Okay, so you're using AR and VR to replicate the experience of being in a shop to help drive sales of products.
Yes.
Great. So obviously the technology that sits behind AR and VR needs development time, but the key premise is that you believe with these extended reality technologies, you can increase interest and sales of e-commerce items. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly.
And
yes.
you are selling to businesses, to retailers.
Yes, yes, or any person that can deliver services or physical goods to sell. Exactly.
Okay, so you do not have to use, you don't have to build lots of stuff using AR and VR. You can create a landing page and run an ad campaign to test out whether even in written form or in visual form, your value proposition is interesting. And you push that out, you bid on some keywords on Google and see if your target customer segment is interested. That's a great MVP. You can create a promo video. You can, think about, I don't know, doing some little like GIFs or animations of the kind of experience that you're trying to create, and see how far that rotates.
I paste to you the video because I've done with avatar with artificial intelligence with the software. I paste the video of advertising all the project for university, but the same kind of technology that I advertise businesses. If you want to see.
Okay, I'm kind of watching the video in the background. So Marco, the key thing is, before spending a lot of time and money building complex technology, you need to prove the demand from your e-commerce and retail clients. There is definitely, a surge of interest in extended realities for retail purposes, but you need to be able to articulate what you are doing really clearly so customers can understand that through some of the ideas that we've shared today or otherwise, and try and drive some kind of transaction to evidence their interest. So what is bad data? If people say, oh, that sounds really cool, crappy data, because people want to be nice. Good data is people clicking through and signing up for a potential future product. Good data is people watching a promo video and being prompted at the end of it to sign up for a form to say, I want to hear more. Good data is running an event about how to expand retail opportunities using extended reality, and the cost of that ticket is £10. All of this is properly looking at transactions for people who are interested in this space and interested in what you might be able to achieve in that space. None of these involve writing or building any kind of technologies using extended reality. Do as much of that as you can before writing any code, because that stuff is complex and it takes time. There's a lot of testing you need to do before you even get there.
Yes, thank you. So is start to test before create exactly what I have to create. So to have the feedback from the people before, and after I can try to understand exactly how to build the business. This is your suggestion, yeah?
Yes, for sure. You really need to understand what people are looking for and their willingness to buy.
I have a quick question. Thanks for sharing your insights. Sure. Is there a danger in, based on the back of what he just said right now about testing your ideas and seeing if there is, that customer base for it? What is there a danger in the sense that you put something out there and before you actually, and you validate that there are customers, but before you actually build it, let's say it takes about 6 months to actually get the product live, and you have somebody else actually building that, taking that idea and basically launching the product. I say that because I had an idea one time before. I spoke to a friend, he's also on this call too. We're working on a new idea now. And then I noticed that Amazon had something like that and they patented it, they had it patented. So the thing is that you can have ideas, but if you don't have, especially when you don't have the know-how from a development perspective, you have developers that can build that in record time. So by the time you're trying to gather funds and know what the tech stack is and blah, 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 it's already out on the market.
Mark, you like this question. Do you want to tackle it?
Yeah, most businesses fail because founders give up and founders argue with each other and founders don't work hard enough. That's why businesses fail more than anything else, right? Competition rarely ever kills businesses. Competition leads to acquisitions, mergers. It proves that you're not barking up a tree and that this is a problem that people genuinely care about. Being first to market is massively overrated. If you are first to market, you have to prove to me why your product is so evolutionary, what value it's going to have. You might have to educate me on what it's going to do. Right? Like if you use my example of helping companies reduce their carbon emissions, it's like, yeah, okay, I have to help them put in reductions and change behaviors, none of which they want to do, and some of which might hurt bottom line, all in the name of the environment. When you put it like that, you can see why people went, yeah, let's not bother with this for the last 40 years, right?
Sure.
Sadly, yeah, my business would have been a total failure 30 years ago, but it was as necessary 30 years ago as it is now. The only difference is now people are willing to listen because people care more and there's more information out there because there are so many people educating people, right? I'm incredibly grateful to my competitors and to the other influencers in the space, like Greta Thunberg and so forth. So do not panic about competition. I promise you, when you first start out, you do worry about this stuff. Every time you see a competitor, you know, you send shivers up your spine, but I promise you, it should inspire you to work harder, to execute harder. And if in doubt, drop them an email and say, hey, let's go grab a beer and talk about what's going on in the industry.
Okay, awesome. Thanks a lot.
And trust that you'll eat them alive in the future.
That's the plan.
This, I would say, Mark, I don't know if you agree, this is probably the most common question that I find from entrepreneurs at this early stage, like most of you in this group. That it's so rare. Between Mark and I, we've probably worked with something like 5,000 early stage entrepreneurs in the last 10 years, and you know, directly mentored probably about 200 teams over a long period of time. We are always asked this, and the thing is, as Mark said, success is 95% execution. In many ways, no idea is new. Facebook, definitely not the first social media platform. There was MySpace, there was Bebo, there was all sorts beforehand. You know, Google, not the first search engine, but the way they went about it was so much smarter than the competition that they managed to achieve market share. That recently, there was a BBC article about the life of Jeff Bezos, post him announcing that he was stepping down as CEO of Amazon. And he said, care about customers, not competition. He doesn't care about competition. He cares about acquiring and retaining customers again and again and again and again and again. Mm-hmm. That's the key thing. And, you know, if a customer is saying, well, I'm not going to use what you're doing because I already have a solution, say, what is that solution and what are the flaws in that solution? Learn from what is out there, learn from what they're already using and make yours better. And what I would also say is ideas stored up in privacy and not shared, in my experience, are infinitely less successful than the ones that are taken out and shared and asked for feedback constantly, including and almost most of all from people who occupy the same space as you, because that is where you'll learn the most.
If we tie this back to the earlier conversation when Ed was talking about Dropbox and there are 100,000 user signups, right? If you were operating back then as a good software developer, you could have seen that and gone, oh, they have 100,000 signups for a product they haven't built. Why don't I just build that myself and I'll obviously win because I'm a great developer, right? That's basically the argument you're making. No one did that. No one succeeded. Dropbox annihilated all of their competition, absolutely annihilated them, right? Execute harder. And people don't have your industry experience, you know, your team, your focus, etc., right? Like, I mean, I can tell you literally anything about our business, and I have no concerns about you trying to copy it. If any of you do and actually really launched a business, then you would be going up against me, which is fine, right? It's more competition in the space, and I know what my defensibilities are, right? Like, that's what you aim for later down the line, like defensibility. That's the word that investors will always look for. What is your defensibility as a product? And that always comes down to, you know, your industry experience, your access to customers, and your ability to execute more than anything else, right? You know, when you're an early days entrepreneur, you might worry about this more because you're thinking, you know, I'm only 21 or, you know, I have limited experience. But what you can make up for with that is an absolute bucket load of passion, right? If someone like me goes, hey, that's a cool business, I might launch that on the side. Do I really care about the customer? Am I that motivated to make this happen? You know, am I going all in on this? Probably not. So don't panic if people do that kind of stuff. And don't panic about the bigger dog stealing it either, right? In the last few weeks, I've spoken to 5 companies who should have already built what we build, right? It should be a part of their service, but it's not. And they are such big businesses. I know it would take them a 12 to 18 month roadmap to build what we have now. In the next 18 months, we will quadruple the quality of what we are delivering, right?
Yeah, Awesome. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
No worries.
I can talk about
Don't
this
fear
one.
competition.
Sure.
Like, there are so many stories about this, right? Like, I'll give you another one. I love this. This is my Whoop strap. It is a very premium, like, heart rate monitor, sleep monitor, performance optimization, and I love it for making me, churn up a gear. They were invited in by Amazon to talk about their product. Amazon ripped off their product full blown, right? And Amazon do occasionally do this stuff, and companies get a reputation for it very quickly. But they did the Amazon version of it. It's cheap, it's tacky, it delivers half of the impact that this does, which makes it maybe 1/10 of as valuable, and it listens to you while you're sleeping. I don't want a device that listens to me while I'm sleeping or while I'm in meetings, and the vast majority of people don't. So even if Amazon rip you off, right, it doesn't mean they are going to beat you.
Yep.
So
David,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I just made a comment on what he said. I said David versus Goliath, isn't it? But yeah, that's a very good example. So yeah, points taken.
So MK, don't know your full name, but have just asked a question again that comes up a lot about intellectual property. First of all, I would advise really understanding whether your company has got IP that can be protected or not. It is very difficult to file a patent. As Mark, I think, commented earlier, if you've just written code, it's very, very hard, if impossible, if not impossible, to patent protect code and software. The kind of things that could get patent protection might be a new kind of mechanism that increases the efficiency of mechanized motion. It could be, some kind of scientific research in, antibiotic resistance. It could be a new drug, something that has basically come out of hours and hours of R&D in labs that is in a category where that thing has never existed before. So I wouldn't even think about IP unless your product is actually patentable. In the rare cases that you have something that can be protected, I would move with a bit more caution, because you have to get people to sign NDAs if you do talk to them about it. And if you do look to file a patent, my advice is, first of all, be able to have somewhere between £5,000 and £10,000 ready to pay for that application. And you basically want to apply for the patent, but not actually achieve the patent. And you have this rolling application, and people aren't able to claim a similar patent within the 2-year period of application. So it basically protects your patent without actually having it patent protected, if that makes sense. But for the majority of tech businesses, there's no IP even to have that you can claim. So focus your time, energy, money, most of all, on building and executing on your business. That's my 2 cents. Okay, so we've got another 5 minutes or so on this part of this afternoon. We would love to hear from you who has managed to design a logo using the logo generator. We'd love to hear who has managed to get playing around on Card and maybe even published their first landing page. And if anyone has got kind of under the hood of Glide apps and started figuring out how you might build a no-code app.
Ed, may I quickly ask a question, please?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, in terms of company names and things like that and websites, if you're going to put an MVP out there, let's say to collect data and sign-ups and things like that, would you advise people to sort of register the company name before they do that? Or does it not matter if you do?
So this is a question about trademarks. I imagine.
Yeah, just about registering your company so that somebody else
yeah. First of all, there is a difference between registering your company and registering your trademark. You can register your company under any trading name and then the actual, company registration name, and then you can trade under any old name, but then you just invoice through your trading name. That's the first thing. In terms of your brand name, there's different ways to think about this. Your brand name could well exist. It probably does exist, depending on how complex it is. And I wouldn't worry about trademarks unless you tackle like Hugo Boss, Amazon, Facebook. Probably want to do that. Don't want to do that. They won't care. They won't care if you take. Most companies won't care if you take a brand name that sounds like theirs. Also, when it comes to trademarks, you can basically register your company in different industry categories. So if anyone knows the comedian Joe Lycett, there's this hilarious story where he took on Hugo Boss, changed his name to Hugo Boss because there was a small company called Boss Brewing that Hugo Boss tried to take down, but they had registered in a completely separate industry. So actually, shouldn't have been able to be touched by Hugo Boss. Anyway, I'm getting distracted. I wouldn't worry about trademarking your name. The one thing that you might want to think about is the SEO value of your brand name.
Okay.
So for example, let's say Masterclass. Masterclass is like an edutainment business that's done insanely well over the last 18 months. You wouldn't want to, have a brand name like that, because when you Google it, you will not be on the first page. You probably won't be on the second page of Google. In relative terms, in 2021, that means you don't exist. So there is an argument for looking for like a bit of a kind of random, maybe a kind of made up brand name to help boost your SEO. And that's why you have a lot of kind of strange brand names that people use, because it means that you're going to rank higher on Google. But yeah, trademark, I wouldn't worry about it at this stage.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much.
Just to really highlight some of these points as well, I've got because I'm at my desk, I've got some old notepads in front of me. That is my first logo that you can see I sketched out in approximately 5 minutes. I mean, I'm really bad at drawing, so actually maybe that took me 10 minutes, but it got the sense of speed in it through my kind of shading. I also realized that I didn't like just calling it thrust. I like having thrust carbon in there, and that's how we kind of want to refer to ourselves. I sketched literally everything out. That was my first draft of my competitor matrix. So generally you've got yourself on the top right hand side, and then competitors with their kind of what they're doing on the other side. We practice all we can preach. There's my very first flow. I mean, you won't be able to read that, but that's my first flow of what the app would look like on page 1. And then, again, page 2, like this is the key purchasing point. That's what it needs to look like. Simple sketches so that you can then show people and get feedback on, and then you can kind of start framing things out. So we cannot emphasize this enough. It is about rough and ready and just getting moving and then getting that feedback, so you can always make little steps forward over and over and over. So we did say who wants to share some of the stuff they've built today. Congrats, Sabina, you've already got I think you said both a logo and a landing page. That's awesome. Do you want to show it and get some feedback? I hope you're feeling brave and ready. Just finishing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, Kenta Mori, so how do you recommend spreading the demo at the earlier stage to get customer feedback? It's a great question. So, well, number one, hopefully you will have started building up like a list of customers or users that you might have spoken to in interviews. They are a great place to start. Second, you might want to just post out on social. LinkedIn is one that I use very actively. It depends on what kind of industry that you're in, but post it out, share the link, tag people in it, use the right hashtags, and maybe have some little rewards or things that people might get for participating. Asking friends, a great way to do it is to say, if someone completes it, at the end of that feedback, you could say, can you recommend 5 other people who might be interested in this? And you get that network effect. You might also want to run events. So I love testing ideas through Eventbrite. I did a whole bunch of stuff on this when we were testing a new product category in my business last year. You push out some free stuff on events on Eventbrite. You invite some speakers to make up a panel, and then you click, would you like to find out more, or would you be happy to give feedback on this idea? The people who click yes, you've got their email, their name, etc. And then you push out your survey, your prototype, your Glide app link, whatever it might be, and then you can run some user tests. You can also, for a little bit of money, use sites like usertesting.com, and then you can actually buy people's time to do some user feedback. I wouldn't do that until you've tried out all of the free options you have at your disposal. Right, it looks like Sabina has got something to demo. Sabina, are you happy to share screen and get some feedback on this?
Hello, I shared the link actually. Probably that's best, but it's not related to the idea that we pitched. But I thought since I had all the information to my current job, I would just like try it and put something very quickly. So it was really easy.
Yeah, it's looking really slick. I'm impressed that you've managed to get that up and running in such a short space of time. Can I share some feedback?
Sure, definitely.
So I would say, from a content and copy perspective, you say you are an interior design consultant. I want to know immediately when I land on there exactly what kind of stuff you offer. So interior design for whom? Is it for people like me who rent a flat and want to make the flat look a little bit better? Is it for businesses? Is it for commercial properties? And also what makes your approach to interior design special? Then from a design perspective, you might want to kind of bring to life your brand with some stock imagery, or even some imagery that you've taken from projects you've led on, just to give more of a sense of what you do. And then most of all, a landing page is most useful where you have basically a call to action. So somewhere where the people who land on that page can sign up to find out more. So you want to have a little sign up box to say, sign up for my newsletter, or fill out a form to get a quote for interior design services. Yeah, to get people to engage with what you're doing.
All right, thank you very much.
No worries. We've had one through from Salim as well. Fantastic. Very cool design. I love the simplicity of the black and yellow. I love that there's a very clear place where you can subscribe. The big thing that's missing for me is just the right copy to explain what you do at Pulsar. So at the moment,
for sure,
I have no reason to sign up because I have no idea what you do. I've never heard of you before. You need to be able to articulate what you do. A great way to do that is logo, strapline or one-line description of what you do. And then, as Mark always says, power of 3. For some reason, human beings love information in a list of 3. So 3 things that make you stand out, 3 benefits that your product gives to the customer. And then on the sign up, you can say, what am I signing up for? Subscribe for what? you know, click here to sign up for our newsletter, click here to get on a list to find out more about our product launch.
For sure. Sounds good. Thank you. I'll do my logo, purpose and mission, and then follow you both in terms of putting in that call to action and power of 3 element there. Cheers, guys. Thanks.
Great stuff.
And one thing, again, something I really worried about when I was younger, if it felt like you had to evolve your brand because you realize your logo is actually a bit naff, or maybe you actually need to entirely change the name for whatever reason, I always felt really self-conscious about that. Like I always felt like my friends or my network would think that it was because the last brand was terrible or you don't know what you're doing. Now I realize the positive side of there being so much stuff out there in the world is people are just so busy, they're rarely on top of this stuff. So as soon as you say, hey, good news, I've done X, people just go, oh, that's really cool, right? All you need to do is tackle this stuff positively. It's like, hey, our last logo was good, but we've got an even better one. Would you like to have a look at it? And people will just go, yeah, that's really cool. I love it. And I do assume each time you make a new logo, it is a little bit better than the last one, or maybe even hugely better than the previous one. Needless to say, don't make your logos worse, then maybe people will.
Yeah, no, I definitely appreciate that value. I also appreciate the sense of growing with your audience as well. So making those iterations on logo probably just represents you're growing with your audience. So
100%, dude. And I promise you, in the startup world, people who have T-shirts with logos that are no longer legit, they're people's favorite shirts, right? Because it's limited edition.
They're probably worth more now,
right? It's so funny. That's genuine brand relationship and affiliation. People feel invested in you. They've been a part of your journey. They can be the ones who are yeah, oh, I was there from the beginning, and it does make a big difference, right?
Perfect.
So we've got 10 minutes left. I'm eager just to get into the last section of today's workshop. Before I do, a little comment on websites versus landing pages. Landing page is quick and dirty way to test your ideas. For a more of a pro website, use one of the 3 that I've shared in the chat. Wix, Squarespace, strikingly, they all cost somewhere between £10 and £20 per month for a very slick and professional one. And in terms of marketplaces, you might want to think about basically reenacting the process of selling stuff through a marketplace, where it might be a Slack group, a Facebook group, whatever, and you get people to share stuff that they're selling, and you basically create the environment and the community, but you don't take any fees. And then people get to know your brand, you understand how people are transacting and using that group, and then you could move on to something like Wix, where they have very good e-commerce functionality, and you can run your marketplace through there. Right, so just in the last 5 minutes, I wanted to, if I can find it, just walk through how a product launch might work. So hopefully you can all see my screen. So first of all, to create your community, I always bang on about this because it is often something that people neglect in favor of working on their product. Your community is everything in 2021. It's where you will grow, it's where you'll make money from. So use this email database that you are beginning to build to send out a newsletter with curated content or events. Set up a community to start testing your ideas on Discord, Slack, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, whatever it might be, and create this community of like-minded people to share content, ideas, start building their trust in you. Where it gets really good is if you can start stimulating user-generated content, because that gives a real sense of authenticity to your brand. And then lastly, create a following on social. I would advise, especially in the earlier stage, to focus on one platform and do it really, really well. It will depend on who your customer is, which one you choose, but they take time to manage. It's very hard to get good at social, so I would focus if you can. Now, the steps that I think about when launching a V1 of a product. In the last workshop, I was actually kind of explaining the steps that I take literally in real time when in the background my business was launching a product. So today is slightly less hectic environment to be sharing this with you. But number one, I always think about shipping small. So your first launch will almost definitely go wrong. It just happens. It's about learning. So use a soft launch to minimize risk. Do not share your product with all 1,000 people on your mailing list. Share with 5, 10, speak to friends and family first, then grow it to 20, but only when you are comfortable that you're learning from the feedback. Then second, build some hype, get people excited, do countdowns on social media, do little releases of sections of your logo or your product, maybe as like a little checkerboard where you're doing reveals each day. Get events going, put a countdown clock on your landing page to get people to sign up, get people excited. Related to that, get some press. So it's quite easy to get journalist emails. It's very hard to convince them to give you free PR. What you want to do is not sell them your product. They don't care about your product. Share with them a story that could be newsworthy. They care about writing current affairs and newsworthy content. They don't want to sell your product. So if you're talking about, well, my app, Hello Joan, an AI-powered app to help elderly people connect with their families, I will talk about some research that I've read coming out of the pandemic about the loneliness crisis happening in London today. And I could pitch, you know, a piece of thought leadership or a comment on that space. And, you know, I can use that to build my brand and even weave in what my product might do. But do not pitch your product to journalists because they won't care. Get on Product Hunt. So Mark has already mentioned about Product Hunt. It's a great place to engage people. It's essentially a showcase for cool new stuff that people are building. If you get your friends and family to upvote you and give right feedback on your products, it's great for impressions, brand building, and SEO. So it's a really good place to do some launches of your products and features. Run events. So I've already talked about how I use Eventbrite. It's also a great way to build your community and your email database. Run some low budget paid ads. Cap that budget, 10 quid, 20 quid, 50 quid. You'll learn a lot of stuff very quickly, and particularly around your audiences. Where are you getting the most traction? Where are you getting the most impressions? With what age groups, geographies, interests, etc. It's a great way to learn. And then lastly, drive referrals. There is a reason why Uber Eats gives you a tenner when you first sign up, because the cheapest way to acquire new customers almost definitely is through referrals. What can you give away, or what can what can users access if they share your app with one other person, with 10 other people? You know, is it free access for a year? Whatever it might be, it's a great way to grow. So now, before we finish, a few things to think about to take this stuff forward. So first of all, you should already have this step-by-step guide to startups that Mark and I have developed for you all. It's got a whole bunch of tips from the workshops that we've already covered. And most importantly, if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a resources toolkit. And if you click on this link, this is stuff that we have compiled from the last 7 or 8 years in startup life. And there's so much good stuff in here. How to run social media campaigns, content creation tools, website builders, brand builders, how to do tax returns, raising investment, all sorts of different stuff. So check it out. And so some key takeaways. So first of all, test and learn fast and cheaply with MVPs. Avoid code until you absolutely have to, and avoid spending any money for as long as you can. And then lastly, build your community as you go. They will be your initial users, your product evangelists. You should rely on them to help make your product successful. Mark, over to you for any final thoughts and reflections.
Yeah, so I think really, I really hope that we have rammed home the importance of swift action and getting early feedback. To re-emphasize, so much of early success is friends and family and force of will, right? It's who can you go to show this stuff to. They don't have to be your perfect customer. There's a lot to be said for any 5 people to first review stuff, because they will give you the kind of feedback that you weren't necessarily expecting, right? So using Cinnabar as a great example, they put their website on the chat, and I had a look through it. I signed up. It looks amazing. But then they asked a question around how often am I going to use their product, or how often am I going to sign up for these events? And the options for me felt too narrow, right? Like there was 0 or less than once a month was the smallest range. And I genuinely feel like, from what I can see, I would see it every couple of months, right? So that's really good feedback in terms of understanding, oh, actually, we just need more broad range to get to those better customer development. So again, it's just further proof. It's incremental, stage by stage feedback. Please do get your mums and dads and brothers and sisters and course friends and mates and hockey colleagues and peers and teammates and whatever else it is to look at this stuff. And the more you build your network now, the better. And then when you can show people specific stuff, they can give you really good feedback. If you will just message Ed and I after this being like, hey, we love the session, can you meet with us to talk about our products? Ed and I aren't really going to say yes, because we are stretched for time. But if you say, hey, can you review our customer survey? Like, we'll read through that and we will tell you what we think. If you say, hey, can you look at our website, look at our business model, like that's stuff that we will review and help with. And the same for investors, the same for building your network. If you go out and ask people for advice, people are flattered, right? There is an age-old adage that is, if you want money, go out and ask for advice. And if you want advice, go out and ask for money. Think about that.
Lovely.